Namaskaram and welcome to Indica Academy. Dr. Rishi Manivannan ji. He's joining us from Coimbatore. He's a Ayurveda medical doctor, as well as he has a very long and esteemed lineage tracing back, I think, to the 48th generation, if I'm not wrong, Rishi ji, of Maharishi Atri Siddha lineage. Could you tell us about your lineage first, and then we can talk about Navaratri and Ayurveda?
So, namaste. Thanks for this discussion. And so it's nice that you asked about it, because it's in the context of Navaratri and what we're talking here. Because for me, all of the things that I entered into formally, or have come officially, been initiated into these practices, it was exactly around the Navaratri time. So starting with the Vijay Dashami and succeed. It's interesting because it was around the Navaratri time that I was formally initiated into these. We called him Atri Maharishi, and I realized or found out that it was Atri Maharishi that we were addressing. But in the Siddha lineage, we address him as Putru Maharishi. And because with the Maharishis and the Siddhas, it's very interesting, because you find that Agastya, there are almost more than 100,000 of texts attributed to Maharishi Agastya. And the question comes as to whether it's the same Agastya Maharishi who authored all of these. And so it's the same Maharishi. So some people say that it's different authors who took up the pen name of Maharishi Agastya. Whereas there are other versions that tell you that it is Maharishi Agastya himself who the Siddhas have a tradition, or they have a practice of going into a samadhi. And once they come out of the samadhi, no one knows when they go into it and how long it takes for them to come out of it. And by the time they emerge from a samadhi, generations would have passed. So by the time they come out, it's a new person who's walking around, but carrying the same name. So technically, it is a new person, but it is also the same personality who is in fact moving around and constantly undergoing different stages of samadhis, different forms of samadhis as well. So this Putru Maharishi was in fact during the 1516 period, the year 1516, that there was a termite mound that was discovered in the Vellore fort, the famous fort. And in this mound, the locals noticed that there was some traces of a person. They saw an arm and a foot. And they realized that, okay, there's someone meditating inside this. And then the locals began to take care of it. They began to, first of all, they removed the termite mound, then they cared for him, washed him, and they kept him in a pristine state while he was in a samadhi. So when he emerged from this state of samadhi, he was very happy and very pleased with the way that he was being taken care of by the people around. So then he taught them the sciences of medicine, which is the Siddha medicine. Then also with that, the art and science of mantras, then astrology, yoga, and also silambam, the martial art. So there's this combination, and Panchapakshi as well. So there's always this combination in Siddha that when you learn Siddha, you never learn just the medicine of it. So it's never Siddha medicine, though now that's what we are familiar with. But Siddha is in fact, it's a group of sciences. It's a set of sciences that together constitute what Siddha is. So my guru, in fact, he comes from that lineage, and he is a 47th master or the guru in that particular lineage of Putru Maharishi. And this Putru Maharishi, then my guru, much later on, that he told me that it was none other than Atri Maharishi, who was during one of his samadhis moving around and happened to pass through this place. Because this town is also a very interesting place, because it's a junction between the passage or the spiritual centers of the south and the Varanasi and the north after that. So a lot of the sadhus, siddhas used to pass through this junction, spend time here and along the hills. Basically, it's on
which place are you talking about, Rishi?
Vellore, the town. Yeah. So because it comes along the eastern Ghats, so you have the famous Javad Malay, on which begins from Vellore and ends in Tiruvannamalai. So you have these ranges through which these saints used to always pass through. So my guru, he comes from that lineage, and their practice is very interesting, because when we talk about the Siddhas, we associate them only with the Shaiva aspect of being the Shiva Bhaktas. But a lot of their practice and the spirituality, the philosophy was centered around Devi or Shakti. And the core deity that they principally worship was Bala, or what they refer to as Vale, or the Vale Tai, who is nothing but the Tripura Sundari or the Balambika. So a lot of what my guru taught me was, in fact, Srividya Upasana, but you don't find it in the orthodox structured manner, which I learned from my other guru. So then I had my other guru who was from Coimbatore, and he introduced me to this whole system of internal worship of Srividya Upasana. So that was very, and again, but what he introduced me to was not the regular ritualistic method. It was again more of the internal worship. So that was from the other side, from Krishna Kumarji, and it was Vaidya Arjunan who introduced me to the Shaiva, but with this other interesting version of the Bala or the Shakti worship. So it was from these two gurus that I learned whatever I did and practiced whatever I did.
Is that common in Ayurveda to also be initiated in Srividya Upasana?
No, actually not at all. I had no idea about it while I was studying Ayurveda. And because for me, when I finished my graduation, I was a hardcore atheist, to be honest. I was a hardcore atheist and not a non-believer of God, but rather a disbelief. I had a forcible disbelief towards the way things are working in the world. So then, but after that, after I met my gurus, it wasn't random. For me, when I look back on it, it seems very, it seems like it was something else at play, not my own decisions or the way things took place. So, but after that, then I got introduced to it, and in fact, this is one of those funny stories where you have usually the disciple who goes begging and asking the master for, give me something I want to learn. But my gurus had to sit and convince me to take these because I was in disbelief. But I think things take the time, and then when I realized that it's something worth understanding or venturing into, then I began to understand Ayurveda much better, because Ayurveda talks about it's Ayurveda. People say that it's the science of life. It's as simple as that when you look at the definition. But I say that it's the science behind life. So Ayurveda isn't just limited to medicine, understanding the human body. When you go deep into the principles of what it's saying, you understand that it's talking about how this whole universe works, the whole cosmos, the physics of reality. And what Sri Vidya Upasana is, of basically Sri Vidya's, when you see the word Sri and Vidya, it's again the science of life again. Sri is nothing but life, consciousness, awareness, which is what makes life possible. So when I began to understand and realize this, it wasn't just supplementary, but it was filling in all the gaps of the science that I'd studied all those years in my graduation. So when
Could you give an example? Could you give an example to illustrate this?
Absolutely, yes. So now, in one of the things that we learn in the first year syllabus, when a newcomer comes to Ayurveda and they study the subject Padartha Vijnana, which is basically understand reality around you. So you have a concept of Navakarana Dravyas. These Navakarana Dravyas are the building blocks of what we experience as reality. So this Navakarana Dravyas we study is made up of the Panchamahabhutas, Atma, Manas, Kala, and Dik. So they say that this is what makes up reality as you envision, as you experience it. So for me, throughout the 5.5 years that I studied, it was just something theoretical. It was, okay, there is something called Navakarana Dravyas. But how do I apply? How do I bring in the concept of space, time, and then the mind, and then the consciousness, and then put all this and apply it in everyday life and also in practice? So then when I began to understand, I wouldn't want to use the word learn, what Sri Vidya is all about. It's more of an understanding that you gain out of it. Is that the format or the structure of the Sri Vidya is based upon the Nava Avaranas. And these Nava Avaranas are nothing but the 9 veils that mask us from understanding our own true nature, what we are truly, and what is it that makes us alive. So these nine avaranas is nothing but this exact same that I had studied in my first year of school, college. But I couldn't really put it into practice at any point throughout my graduation and my studies. But as I began to understand this, it became much more easy to apply different dimensions of healing and treatment to the person coming to you. Because when you're talking about the nine veils, these Nava Avaranas, some talk about it as being the nine chakras in the body, the nine veils, the nine colors. But when you look at what is masking us from understanding our reality, it is our notion of what we are and our identity. And what we identify ourselves with is this physical reality, the Maya. And what makes up this Maya is this nine building blocks of the Pancha Mahabhutas, Manas, Atma, Kala, and Dik. So, understanding or delving deep into Srividya, it really unlocked a lot of things that Ayurveda is trying to talk about. And but there are almost 50 to 60% of things even till date that is mentioned in the text, and unfortunately, that some people who are governing the education, the academics of Ayurveda, who deem it to be unscientific and outdated. That Ayurveda should be evolved, it should be updated. But unfortunately, this is the crux of Ayurveda because there is no other science that gives you a glimpse into what consciousness is, what awareness is. Everyone is talking about physicality, understanding matter, material, understanding energy to an extent. You can understand energy with tools and devices, but to understand consciousness, it's not something that you can just use a tool or a device and objectively validate it. But Sri Vidya goes entirely into this depth. It talks about the consciousness which gives rise to all of reality that you see. So this gives you a very different perspective in how you approach things. So if I had studied just my, the curriculum Ayurveda and had gone out, I would be looking at things based on the structure by understanding things as they appear. But when you understand that there is something else that's playing a role deep within that is reflecting on or manifesting on the exterior, so that allows you to not from here but goes deep within. So, like in Sri Vidya, they say that there are two ways to worship the chakra. You can either start from the base and you can go work your way up to the bindu, or you can directly worship the bindu. And when you worship the bindu or realize the bindu, you understand everything else that is manifested from the bindu. So this is the advantage that understanding these deeper tantric, sciences really helps us a lot. It helps you get to the core of reality itself.
We had also exchanged something about the nine herbs which are connected to Navaratri and each day. And there was a one line which said that initially the herbs were the points of worship, but now, other things have taken over. So when we talk about these herbs and worshipping the herbs, um, as the corresponding nine devis during Navratri, which would you say for an Ayurveda practitioner, which comes first? And is she in all these herbs or are the herbs in her? How do we?
That's a good question as well because it's not limited to the herbs itself. Of course, the concept of Navaratri it's much deeper, but unfortunately, what we are doing now is we're neither worshipping the real tattva or trying to imbibe the real tattva within us, nor are we going towards something which is something at least which is the herbs in fact. So but the real tattva is beyond the herbs. To be honest, it's beyond the herbs. And if you look at the earlier practice, there is this thing in all the cultures, not just the Indian culture. You have a division when they talk about the gods. There's the old gods and the new gods. Always, all the cultures have this. So the old gods, which is very interesting, not just pertaining to the Vedic culture, the ancient Vedic culture, but most of the other cultures of this world as well. You see that they used to worship nature. It wasn't a form or a person that was being worshipped. Because back then, the method of worship, when you say worship, it's not just bowing down and surrendering, which is a big deal in itself, which is the first step. But it's also trying to imbibe. there is a saying that you become what you worship. Only gods worship gods. And the reason being that when you worship something, you're trying to imbibe the gunas of that particular aspect into yourself. You're trying to inculcate it. So that was the original method of worship. And later on, what happened is a lot deviated from worshipping the crude forms of nature from which reality or primary life originates. And we went to more of modifying things as we require. So this modification is what gave rise to the new gods, as to say. And so it's basically we have tailor fit particular gunas into particular forms as per our needs rather than us surrendering entirely to nature. So the original yeah. So the original version is to worship nature, what these tattvas, and to inculcate from nature itself. But as man's intellect keeps, decreasing, or I should say, changing with each of the yugas and with the time period, you have the herbs which come in as the next in line, because this is nothing but nature itself again. So you cannot visualize something which is not visible. So fine. So here is something that you can try and visualize. But the herbs, it's not merely just as a medicine. So when you worship the herbs, like I said, when you try to inculcate the gunas, there are many ways in which you can take the gunas or I should say the properties of a particular substance into yourself. And this is something that we practice in our everyday life without realizing. So whenever we place a banana, a coconut, and a few flowers in front of a deity, an idol, what we and many people say this, whether it's superstition or not, there is a science to it. They say that the food that you have placed as the Naivedya or the Padayal to the deity, if you taste it afterwards, you'll see that the taste has changed. It has reduced or it has altered or there's no taste at sometimes. So many people pass this off as a placebo effect or something that's delusional. But what is actually happening is that the deity or the idol that you have consecrated and given life to, it is not without reason that the great Siddhas and the Maharishis gave us specific materials such as the Panchaloha and then the Karunkal, the black granite, as materials to create these deities from. Because these have the ability to absorb within themselves. So using particular techniques, when we place it in front of the deity or that particular idol, it absorbs the properties of whatever you placed in front of it. It's basically like a wireless transfer that has been done. And this is the actual method of worship as well. So when you are placing the Naivedya or when you use or worship these herbs, you're trying to inculcate the gunas of it within yourself. And secondarily, you can also consume it, which will benefit your physical body. But we are not limited to only the physical body. Like in Siddha or even in Yoga Shastra, there are many divisions, many classifications of understanding the body. Some base it upon the Panchakosha. And then in Siddha and other sciences, they say that there are three dimensions: the Udal, the Uyir, and the Anma. So you have the physical gross body, which is the Stula Sharira. Then you have the Uyir, which is nothing but the Sukshma Sharira, where you have the Manas, the Prana, and all of these subtle aspects which are constantly functioning. And finally, you have the most subtlest, which is the Karana Sharira, the consciousness within, and which is the Anma, Atma, the Anma. So this is the factor which is giving the code or the program for everything else to function. So now when you feed yourself, when you need to feed, this feeding isn't just physical. It has to be spiritual as well. It has to be information that you feed into yourself. So these methods of worship, especially during the Navaratri, it is to supplement these three levels of your existence and the three dimensions of your existence. The physical, by using the herb for supplementing whatever is deficient or whatever you require as a booster. And then you also have the methods of worship, which are not physical, but you have a technique where you can take the property of it and imbibe it into your subtle body, the Sukshma Sharira, where your prana gets recharged. So it's not just the dhatus and the doshas, but your prana, the agni, and the ojas get supplemented as well. And finally, when you understand the tattva that resides in that particular herb, you are nothing but you're supplementing your consciousness. You're altering the way, reprogramming the way that you want to function from now onwards. So you're becoming a controller of the karma rather than having your karma controlled by circumstances around you.
Would you mind going through the 9 herbs, Doctor?
Absolutely, yes.
If it's not. So,
No,
starting with.
so these 9 herbs, in fact, when you look at the division of it and the method of worship, they say that first, during the period of worship, you worship Kali first. And after which, for the next 3 days, you worship Lakshmi. And the last 3 days, you worship Saraswati. So this is in fact a transition between tamas, and tamas is not bad. So this is the first thing I want to mention. Whenever we say tamas, first thing that comes to people's mind is, oh, tamas is bad, it's dark, it's negative. But tamas is nothing but crude energy, power in its raw form. That's all tamas is. And the reason that it has a negative connotation to it is because it's very hard for people to handle such power. That's all. It's not that the power which is bad. It's us being unable to handle it. It's our inability which makes it. So this transition from tamas to sattva, so is nothing but the method of worship that we have in these 9 days. And the herbs are also systematically designed in the same manner. So when you look at this, you have the herbs which give you a lot of prana initially. And you don't immediately just cut off into something rajasic or that gives you agni, tejas. You have a slow transition. The first day, you have pure tamas. The second day, you have something that is tamo rajasic. The third day, you have something that is tamo sattvic. And during the next 3 days, you have the herbs, the gunas of the herbs are nothing but you have something which increases tejas or agni, the Lakshmi tattva. So you have something which is rajo tamasic, then purely rajasic, then you have rajo sattvic. And finally, the last 3 days, you have the herbs which are sattvic in nature, but also associated with this is like sattvic, but with a tinge of tamas. Then sattvic, but with a little bit of rajas. And finally, you have something which is purely sattvic. So these 9 herbs are in fact designed in this manner to help in a transition from the power of tamas to the power of sattva or the ojas within. So these 9 herbs, I go through it, are in fact designed in this particular manner to supplement your subtle body. So Pratime Shailaputri, you have the Haritaki. And Haritaki is in fact, it's a very fascinating one. I mean, there's a lot of countless songs, verses, shlokas from not just the Indian system. You have Ayurveda, Siddha, and even the Tibetan system, which sings praises of Haritaki. And the reason being that Haritaki is we look at things only, we are still stuck in that material aspect of understanding things. So, other than all the chemicals, the flavonoids, and all the things that it contains within it, one of the synonyms given for Haritaki is Shiva. And the reason that the synonym Shiva is given to Haritaki is because it is purely pranic in nature. All it does is give tremendous amount of prana to a person. So when you look at the living systems, the human living system, now for me to talk, to function, I need to have fuel within me. Just like how a car needs fuel to run, I need to have fuel within me to function. And that fuel which gives, the form of energy that gives us fuel for all our physical functions is the prana. And the energy which fuels all our subtle functions, say that I'm sitting here. Now, when I want to move my hands and legs, I need the crude energy of prana. Now, for my organs to function within, it's beyond my control. I cannot control the way I want my stomach to function. I cannot control the way that I want my heart to function, unless I, of course, practice few yogic techniques, and then I can control my involuntary nervous system. Yes. But these are functions which are taking place irrespectively, whether I would choose for it to stop or not. So these are functioning on the energy of Agni or Tejas. And finally, when you come to the higher mental functions, such as intellect, awareness, for me to process, analyzing things that I'm perceiving around me. So all of these higher mental functions, they require the fuel of ojas. So these are the 3 primary fuels that are required for these 3 levels of functions that we are performing on an everyday basis. So on the first day that that we supplement ourselves with is the energy required for the physical body. Because without this physical body, which is the yantra, this is the yantra that makes everything possible. For you to realize, experience, to even transform and elevate yourself, it is not possible without the human body. And that's why they say that even the devatas are jealous of the humans because we have a physical body. We are in control of what we want or what we should be experiencing later. So this human body is the ultimate thing that should be protected. Sharira madhyam kalu dharma sadhana. Without the sharira, you cannot perform anything. So the first day or the first 3 days begins with caring for the physical body. And the first day that you have is in fact Shailaputri Haritaki. And this Haritaki, and you also see this connection, it's beautiful because it's Shailaputri. And when you look at the Haritaki and the synonyms, one of it is basically Shaila, which says that the best Haritaki is got from the mountains. You get Haritaki that grows everywhere. Haritaki grows down on the plains, it grows by the river. Haritaki be found anywhere. But the best Haritaki is from the mountains. And here this symbolizes, when you talk about Haritaki, we're talking about giving that prana that your body needs for basic functions. And that is the first herb that we start our ritual, the 9-day ritual with. So it is pure prana. You're first giving your body the prana that it needs in order to do the more refined and subtle functions as we proceed. Then you have the Dvitiya Brahmacharini is the Brahmi. Brahmi is the herb, which is again associated with the brain. So, but when you look at its nature, it is one of the herbs which is again very rich in prana. The Siddha system uses herbs in a very different manner than what Ayurveda does. In Ayurveda, the focus is upon the seven dhatus and the three doshas of the body. So we in Ayurveda, though it does deal or mention about the more subtle functions of the body, they don't want to confuse the Vaidya. And they're very, very particular that this science that they're designing is for the Vaidya who is perceiving things with his sensory organs, with the five senses. Whereas the Siddha system of medicine, it is evolved and designed for a Siddha yogi, saying that you need a different level of perception to understand what is going on within another person's body. So this is not based on your sensory faculties, but you're trying to read the state of the prana within the person. So the herbs given in Siddha, they are sorry, so they are the same. You look at the herbs, the dravyaguna, the dravyas, they are the same as what we use in Ayurveda, but with a very different point of view and a method of usage. So Brahmi, which is nothing but Pecoca monolia, it is used in Ayurveda as well. It's used for relaxing the brain, relieving the stress, and then to improve your nerve strength. It is used for all these particular conditions. But in Siddha, they have a concept that only when the brain is receiving the maximum amount of prana can it then properly control all the other parts of the body. Without this being nourished, the other parts of your body will automatically not be functioning at its optimum level. So the first thing that you do is give a supplement or surplus of Brahmi to the human body. And when we look at the gunas also, it's interesting because while you see Haritaki is nothing but pure prana, Brahmi in Ayurveda is considered as a cold herb, something that is Shita Virya. But in Siddha, they say that it is Ushna, hot. It seems contradicting because one science is saying that it's cold, the other science says that it's hot. So how do I know where to use it? So they're not actually contradicting because they're talking about hot and cold on a very different dimension. So when Ayurveda says that it is cold, it is saying that it is nourishing. The word cold is not indicating the physical temperature or the dynamics of the drug. Rather, it's saying that this is nourishing for your body. When Siddha says that it is Ushna or hot, it is not because it is going to deplete your body, but because it increases the Agni or the Tejas of your Buddhi. So it is hot because it stimulates. Because most of the other herbs which are cold, they make you more mandam, they make you more sluggish. Something that is cold is automatically sluggish in nature. But with this drug, you find that though it is heavy in nature for digestion. It's very hard for the body to process it, but it increases the tejas of your buddhi. So here we see that the second herb which is used on the second day for the Devi Brahmacharini, it's interestingly something which is giving you a surplus of prana. It gives you a lot of prana for the central nervous system, for your entire nadi, and what we call as the nadi narambu in Tamil, for this system to function. While at the same time, it increases the agni. So you see a transition from the pure pranic herb to something which is pranic in nature, but also something that's increasing the agni of your buddhi. Because what can happen is, this is the problem, like I was saying, when you give too much of prana, the tamas, it can overwhelm a person. And that is where they say that a person gets corrupted by power. Your buddhi doesn't work. But here we are making sure that you're giving prana, but you're also allowing for the person's buddhi to work. So there's a transition. And then the third herb that you have is Ritye Chandraganta. Chandrasud, maybe. I missed the herb. What is the herb that I have another herb called Chandrasura here. Is it the same that Malaji and the list you have? Sorry.
It says Chandusura or Chamsura, and
Yeah.
also called Chandrika or Charmhanti.
Yes. This Chandrasura. Because Chandrasura is not a name that's used much because it comes under the Surana variety. So Surana is the yam, the tubers that we have. So in that, you find that almost two of the yams are used here, and these are yams that are almost out of use. No, we barely use this nowadays in our cuisine, but it was very prevalent. So when you look at the yam, this particular thing, what we call in Tamil as chena, chena kirangu, chepe kirangu. So this is entirely black in color.
Correct. And very
And
small, right?
yes,
Smallish.
very small. It's not as big as, it's not like an
Yeah,
elephant
as
size.
gourd kind of.
That's the big one. Yeah. So this is much smaller in nature. So this one here, what we are doing is, again, the interesting thing about the yams, or especially very specifically this particular variety, is that anything which grows below the ground, we know is usually avoided, because in many of the Hindu sects or even the Jain sect, it's avoided because it is tamasic. Anything that grows below the ground is considered as tamasic. That would make you sluggish as well. But this acts as an exception, because unlike the other tubers which grow underground and which make your metabolism sluggish as well, rather this, like just very similar to how this black turmeric is, it's they made a big deal out of it now. So similarly, this also has the capacity to work or to give you a lot of prana. So it doesn't make you sluggish. It is heavy for your body to process, but the moment you consume it, your physical body feels, you feel like you would want to do some work. You want to spend that energy that you've just consumed. But at the same time, the specific thing about this is that it is, though all the tubers are usually, including potato, heavy. That is the rule with the tubers, that anything which is a tuber is guru in guna. But this comes as an exception, where this is the only tuber which is lagu. So you have a tuber growing under the ground, which is tamasic in nature, but it's black in color, which acts as an indicator which tells you that this is a potential storehouse of prana. But it acts in total defiance to all the other tubers which exist, and it's lagu in nature, which means that the moment you consume it, the moment it touches your mouth, it's entered and digested into your body. Anything else otherwise would probably take more than a day to go through your entire system and then enter your blood and for it to digest and then enter your body.
Next
So the
is,
first, yeah. So
you
the
want to
first
continue about that? Yeah.
yeah, I'll just, yeah. Because the first 3 days that we see, so now we see that all the herbs which have been focused upon these 3 days, it's primarily based on Kali, Shiva, these aspects of prana that we are trying to give to the body. And these three herbs also signify this transition from something that's purely pranic. Because prana is good, but there's a saying that "Alavu meerinal amrutamum nanju," which is that if it exceeds its quantity, even amrita becomes visha. Even nectar can turn toxic. So there's a beautiful transition that happens. So from something purely pranic in nature, you're giving prana, then you give prana and agni, then you're giving prana and ojas along with it, which is nothing but you're giving tamas, but with a combination of sattva to the body. So this is the first 3 days. Then the next 3 days, you have the next herb. The fourth day, you have Kushmanda. So Kushmanda it's now it's started to trend. People are talking about the white pumpkin, the ash guard, and its benefits, all of this. But I mean, we've been doing this drishti since a long time with the Kushmanda. So Kushmanda, in fact, why would our Siddhas or our ancestors pick of all the possible fruits, something like coconut and this ash guard for being the ritualistic tool? With many of the patients who come, when I tell them that it's the ash guard, they're not aware of it. They're like, okay, you mean pumpkin? And I tell them, no, the one that we do the drishti with. Then they identify and they're like, okay, wow, I thought it was only for drishti, but I didn't know it's for consuming. And then, I have to tell them that the original purpose of all these rituals being preserved was to conserve these herbs and keep them in our practice, in our knowledge. But unfortunately, the rituals have become so ritualistic that neither do we actually understand its guna, the benefit that we are supposed to draw from it. So all that happens is we use it for the ritual, we throw it on the road. But in fact, it holds a lot of potential, not just as a supplement for the body, the physical body, but the Kushmanda, it represents the Hiranyagarbha, the womb from which all of this cosmos and existence manifested. So, in fact, one of the synonyms of the Kushmanda is, in fact, Hiranyagarbha itself, because it's you cannot quantify how much energy, how much life is possible, could possibly fit into it, because based upon the normal laws of physics, if I take a specific amount of space, you can quantify that this space should have only this much amount of energy in it. That's how large science works. But then what quantum science says is that when we talk about quantum science, it says that if you take a specific amount of space, you cannot quantify the amount of energy in it. That is where you have another dimension of science that says that things don't always go as per calculations. And this Kushmanda, in fact, is a representation of that. So when we talk about the Devi's womb, this earth, or a woman's feet, the womb, the uterus, all of these have one thing in common, that these are basically carriers of energy. These are carriers and generators of potential energy. And you just cannot say when that energy stops coming out of it. You can always keep giving rise to life. So these are like small, nuclear bombs to say. And the Kushmanda is one such herb. And here the Kushmanda comes as a first herb when we're making a transition into the worship of Lakshmi. Because when we are worshipping Lakshmi, you're worshipping not just awareness, but you're worshipping the Agni, which gives rise to life. Now, without fire, nothing can be created. It's only when two things rub, when there is friction, that there is heat that is generated. So, without the male and the female, without the Shiva and the Shakti, without the Ida and the Pingala, without this dual opposites, the union can never happen. And when these two unite, there's always a friction that happens between the two. And this friction is what is represented as the Agni. And this Agni is nothing but life itself. So the reason that we worship Agni in almost, be it a small home ritual where you're lighting a lamp, or whether it's a big homa where you're having a big fire, in all of this, Agni is given the foremost importance because Agni is life. It is what makes life dynamic. Otherwise, all of life, otherwise, this earth would be like, say, the moon, Pluto, or Jupiter, where things would be just still. Nothing is moving, everything just inert. And when things are inert, you can't call it life. So, the reason that you worship Kushmanda is to understand this aspect of life, to delve deep into it, to inculcate that. And how do you inculcate it? Just by looking at the pumpkin, the ash guard, it's not going to give an idea of, okay, this is how life emerged on earth. Instead, what you do is you try to imbibe its nature within yourself through the set practices which have been given to us. And when you do that, you experience a state within yourself. That state that you experience gives you a realization of how life happens. So Kushmanda here comes as a foremost drug in this second phase of the Navaratri, because you're starting to worship life itself. You're trying to worship the Agni Tattva of life, the Agni which is hidden within all of matter. So when you look at Kushmanda, it is something which is cold in nature. So no one would associate it with Agni. But this is the medicine which is given for increasing your intellect. So now,
Sorry, I missed the name of the medicine.
Kushmanda.
The medicine is also called Kushmanda.
Kushmanda, there are many medicines made from it. One of it is the Kushmanda Rasayana, which is the most popular medicine and one of my favorite medicines. It's called a Rasayana, where you have this long pepper, pipali, and jaggery, and then you have cinnamon, clove, spices, and then all of this is cooked along with the pulp of the ash guard. So this is cooked into a avaleha or a jam. So that is used for multiple, whole range of disorders, and very specifically for patients suffering from tuberculosis. And tuberculosis is a coined term which has been given, but for people who are suffering from severe depletive disorders where the body is constantly degenerating, breaking down, and disorders related with the respiratory system, with the neurological system, with the brain, the nerves. So it has a wide range of action. And in Ayurveda, we use it for stabilizing the pranavayu as well as the apanavayu. So these two are the main vayus. So one is responsible for the input and one more is responsible for the output. One sustains life inside you. The other vayu is responsible for taking the life out of your body, the apana. So Kushmanda is fact. It's a herb which is used for stabilizing these two vayus. So Kushmanda, we make a lot of medicines. Kushmanda Rasayana is one of those medicines. Kushmanda Avaliha, Kushmanda.
I remember this story when the lingam was brought into Vaidya Grama and they were not able to lift it onto the pedestal, onto the uni. And they used the Kushmanda to, it could actually bear the weight, I think 4 or 5 of them. I don't know if you were there when it happened.
Yes. I wasn't.
Yeah, but it seemed miraculous how they even thought of using pumpkins to bear the weight of that heavy lingam.
The very more interesting thing is that these pumpkins, you can keep them for 3 years and they're not without a fridge, and you won't see even a single sign of decay or rot on it. So say there's a famine happening, you just need to grow these things. They stay for 3 years, so they're that sturdy, that durable. They have, and that's the reason that again we equate it with the Hiranyagarbha, because it's so tough and resistant from the outside, but on the inside. And the reason it's so tough, you understand why, because it contains so much life within it. that it's so durable and so tough and resistant on the outside to protect the inside of it. But the same thing, it represents another aspect where when we worship Lakshmi, all the different deities, the Devis, they're just combinations of gunas, basically. You have tamas, rajas, and sattva. These are the three primary gunas. And when you make a combination of these gunas in different ratios and proportions, that's what gives you rise to the different deities, devas, devatas that we worship. And when you look at Devi Durga, she in fact, Dhum Durgaye Namnama. This Dhum, the Bija Akshara Dhum, it represents nothing but the seed itself, the coating on a seed. So if I take the mango seed, the pulp inside it is probably the life inside it. But you see that the hard kernel which is on the outside, that represents Durga Devi. That is Durga Devi. So even when we talk about this Kushmanda here, it is holding a lot of potential, the consciousness, ojas inside. But the durable nature of that outer covering, that represents, when you tap it, you get the Dhum Shabda. So that Dhum Shabda is nothing but Durga's Shabda, which is the protective nature of Durga, who shields you from everything, who protects you from everything. And Durga is also, very interestingly, she is nothing but also an aspect of Lakshmi. But like I said, each one's worship, each culture's worship is based tailor-made, based on what they need. So while some worship Mahalakshmi, some worship Lakshmi, some worship Durga, they're worshipping the same guna, which is the Agni or the Tejas. And this Tejas is what, in fact, protects you. It protects you from the harm from outside, but it also keeps you going from inside. You need this Agni to keep going. So Kushmanda here, I'm glad that you brought this up because that durable, resistant nature of Kushmanda, it talks a lot about the Agni or the Durga's Tattva aspect. Yeah. So the fourth day, in fact, we begin it with the Kushmanda to talk and to represent this aspect.
I think next is says linseed.
So then on the fifth day,
Yeah.
yes, Panchama, Skandamata. So Arya is nothing but flax, which is now being used again, which is again people have
Flaxseed,
started
is
using
it?
it a lot.
It mentions
Yes,
here a
yes.
linseed. Same thing, real seed.
Yeah, linseeds, flax seeds,
Sure.
it's the same. I think, yeah. Yeah, because alassi, in my mind, because I don't, yeah, we use it as
Yeah.
that. So here, what we have is again, you see that something snigdha, the nature of alassi or the linseed is that when you crush it and you leave it in water for a while, you get a gel out of it. It becomes viscous in nature.
Right.
And but at the same time, this viscous nature, what it does is it helps to unite. It acts as a glue. Helps to fix things back which are broken. So you see that it has, just like how Kushmanda, though it has Agni in it, is durable in nature. But you also see that the pulp inside is very gooey, is very mucoid in nature. Which and all these things which are mucoid in nature, they have the ability to unite things which are broken. And when you're healing the body, that is one of the most important things. It is not just sufficient that you give your body supplements, and that's how the entire industry is running now. People just give supplements for the body, but no one talks about the physical nature of the body. When something is broken, you we have the innate tendency to glue things back when they're broken. But with the human body, we never really think of gluing the body back when it is damaged or torn from within. And all the diseases that occur are primarily because of a disruption in the structural integrity of the human body. At some point, at some level, in any of the parts of your body, when you say that there is a disease, it's not just because there's an inflammation going on in that particular part. It doesn't matter if the heat has increased or the pressure is increased. None of this would make a difference if that particular part's structural strength is at its optimum. So when you take a wall, the wall of a house, when you look at these old houses, built with the lime and the stone, they are standing for 1,000 years despite rain and sun, wear and tear. They are still resistant to it because the binding material used for such building such houses were of that nature. They were solid. But you see the houses now, or you take a very a cheaply built house, with just a few months of sun and rain, it will start to wear out because it doesn't have the structural integrity. So when you look at these herbs are gluing the body back together. Kushmanda, then the alasi. These are gluing the body back together, fitting it back together. But at the same time, they are also, because a very important thing to understand with the Agni or Pitta, the nature of Pitta is that though it is Ushna, it is hot, it is Sasneha. Sasneha means there's the word Sneha is used in two contexts to describe two of the doshas. For Kapha, they use the word Snigdha, and for Pitta, they use the word Sneha. So when they're talking about the Snigdhatva of Kapha, they're talking about something which is inert, stable. So when I want to make something strong, there are two ways I can make it strong. I can put a big stone within it and make it inert and sit in a place. So then from outside, if any damage happens, nothing's going to happen to it. This is the way of taking care of the kapha. But we don't want to make the human body inert. We want to keep it functional, we want to keep it dynamic while making it resistant to diseases. So then comes the concept of pitta, where you give something which is sasneha. You're not giving something that is going to make it inert and sluggish, but you're going to give something that's just enough to glue it back together. But that's also Ushna in nature to keep the system running. So these herbs are all designed in that manner, where you're giving Agni along with the Soma, which is going to go and fit things. So Alasi has this property of gluing the body back together, but keeping the Agni going simultaneously. And you see there's a transition again over here where you have Kushmanda, which is the entire fruit and quite a large fruit at it. And the Kushmanda, when you take it from the plant, yes. So, so we see this transition again. So from Kushmanda, which is a very bulky fruit, we go to something which is the bija or the seed. So this again is we're talking, but now we are in the phase of basically the whole 9 days is the Durga Puja. And but Durga is a Devi who holds in all the three gunas into herself. But these 3 days are specifically for the Agni, the Tejas Tattva of her, or the Lakshmi Tattva. So here the herbs which are focused on are, they contain Agni in it, but not in a form that you would expect. Because the moment you put pumpkin on your mouth, it's not going to burn your tongue. It's going to feel cold. So you're not going to associate it with something which is hot. But that is where Lakshmi really resides. Just like how the lotus flower, the lotus, you have a mud pond, and in all that murky mud and with all that water, this lotus, it emerges from the base and comes outwards. And no one, and lotus again, when we talk of lotus, we think of it as cooling, something that is coolant in nature. But lotus has a very interesting physiology, the plant physiology. It is one of the few plants which has a auto thermoregulation, which means that it doesn't depend on the sun's heat for its functioning. Rather, it has a capacity to generate its own heat for it to carry out its functions, which just a handful of plants in this entire world are capable of doing. And that's what Lakshmi Tattva signifies, the ability to generate tejas from within yourself. So these herbs are exactly the same, except that they're not growing in a pond. The pond is within themselves. So you have the Kushmanda, which is completely surrounded by the cooling pulp. But within this cooling pulp it has a capacity to produce that tejas or that Agni that gives life, or that in fact gives life to the person consuming it as well. So from the Kushmanda, which is the bulky fruit, you see that next we go to the bija, which is the linseed. So though here we're focusing on the tejas, but you have tejas with something that's more prithvi mahabhuta based or more tamas in nature, which is the Kushmanda with its bulk. And then you move to the linseed, which is in Ayurveda, we understand that all the seeds are nothing but Agni itself. They are the bija. So it is in seed, it is within the seed that the potential energy is contained and is ready to just burst out and emerge. So the energy is it's in a ready to burst out stage. So the linseed again, from tamas, we see that here we go to rajas and with the linseed. And now with the next, which is the machika. The machika is again in it's another form of this. It's not. It doesn't come under the colocasia, but it's another form of the tuber, the machika. You can't.
This is the seventh day. Oh, no, sixth day.
Sixth day. Sixth day. So the machika here is when you look at the color of it, it has a very interesting orangish red color to it. And the effect that it does is that this is a herb that though it contains Agni Mahabhuta in it, but you see, similar to the previous two, it is also Shita in nature. And it's completely Lagu. So here the leaves are usually used as the offering, which are consumed. And though in Ayurveda and in Siddha, it is the root that we use for the medicine. But in this particular practice of these 9 days, it is the leaves that we consume here. The reason being that you're transiting from a fruit, the bulky fruit, to the seed, to the patra. So there is, in fact, we always, when we offer the offering Naivedyam to the deity, we have a flower. I mean, usually we have a flower, a fruit, and we have a leaf. Patram, pushpam, phalam, and patram, samarpyam. So the patra, the leaves are, in fact, they are very significant because when you look at its corresponding part on the human body, it is our hands and our feet. The reason that we draw the petals in any yantra, so when you look at any yantra, with Sri Chakra, the Ganapati yantra, Dhanvantri yantra, all the yantras have petals around them. And this petal shape, it's almost similar to that of the petal of a flower or the leaf of a plant. Both of them have one common function. The petals, they receive energy from the sun at specific time. They hold it within, and then they refine, they convert that pure prana into ojas within itself. And when they open up again, it releases ojas back into the nature. So it's in fact taking prana, holding and giving Agni and giving back ojas. But with the patra, it is purely prana, a function of prana that is taking place. So there are many aspects of the human physiology that, in fact, that we don't jump deep into in Ayurveda itself, but that Siddha, in fact, talks about. Siddha says that for a person to sustain, it is not just the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food that we eat that keeps us going. There is an invisible force of prana around us that we have around 3.5 crore romakupas or hair follicles throughout our body. And in many of the Upanishads, you find a reference of 3.5 crore nadis in the body. So this, in fact, talks about the nadis which originate on the skin. So just like how a plant does photosynthesis constantly by receiving the sun's energy and converting it into its required form of energy within, our human body is absorbing prana from the environment around, uptaking it within. And this is other than the food, the air that we breathe, and the water that we drink, that our skin is constantly receiving the prana. So when you consume the machika, what you're basically taking in, or on a subtle body level, on a subtle level, you're stimulating this aspect of your physiology. And that's what differentiates the normal beings from the yogis. You see, a yogi, he doesn't have the requirement of physical food for his sustenance. He doesn't need physical water to quench his thirst. The yogi can go underwater and survive, go underground and survive, go to a high altitude and survive. So there, they're able to take in the gunas without the need for the physical medium through which the gunas are being given. And when we are worshipping the Machika or using the Machika to worship, we are trying to imbibe this guna of being able to take in prana from around us without having to consume food to get the same prana. And on a physical level, when you consume the Machika, the leaves of it, it works by stimulating the Agni. But you see that it has a combination of Agni but prana. The Akasha Mahabhuta is more associated here. So it activates these aspects of your physiology which are based on Agni. So when I say that Agni and the Akasha, it's primarily to do with, say, my sensory organs, my eyes, my ears, my nose, all these organs, they have their own individual Mahabhutas that are attributed to it. But on a broader spectrum, all these Mahabhutas, they require Agni because there's a conversion that's taking place. Just like how you take rice, you need fire to cook it into edible food. Similarly, all the perceptions that we gain, the information, the data that I'm getting from around me as sound, as smell, as vision, as images, it has to be processed within and fed as information in another form to my brain. Only then can my brain perceive it, not as a direct image.
Yeah.
So this Machika works very specifically on the sensory faculties of your body when you consume it as a medicine within. But on a spiritual level, when you use it for worship, you're imbibing or you're trying to inculcate the ability of the human body to survive on Agni, but without the requirement of the physical nature of it. So this is one of the beautiful places where you see a transition from Prithvi Mahabhuta to Akasha Mahabhuta. So you have Kushmanda, you have the Alasi, and finally you have the Machika leaves, which are used. But all three are pertaining to the Agni principle in the body, the Lakshmi Tattva.
Have some water.
Yes. So finally, we come to the last phase of the Navaratri, the last 3 days, where Saraswati is being worshipped, or basically the Sattva Guna is being harnessed into ourselves. And so this 3 days, it has three herbs, which is the Nagadaun. Nagadaun is the Hindi name given for the particular herb. And then you have the Tulsi, common, and the Shatavari, which is known. So Nagadaun is, in fact, it's not very commonly used. It's more found, its use is more in tantric rituals because its root is what is predominantly used. So people use it in Tantra because they say that the root is exactly like the human brain and the spine in its shape. And in fact, the Hindi name Nagadaun, it signifies that it represents the serpent. It resembles the serpent, the coiled serpent, more specifically. So there are many such herbs which like this, such as the Sanjeevani Mulike. In Tamil, there's a herb known as Sanjeevani, which is nothing but a root which is spiral. And this root, when you place it in water, usually when water flows, things flow with in the direction of the water. But this is one such herb where when you place it in running water, it flows opposite to the current of the water the moment you place it.
That is this one, is it? This Naga.
This is no, not this one, but this.
The Sanjeevani.
Though that is the one which is popularized, this is very similar in its properties to that.
Okay.
And so the coil, and I mean that is simple physics. It's not magic. Because of the shape, it gives it a hydraulic thrust and it moves. So this Nagadaun is a very similar herb where the root of it is what is used. And it's used in a lot of tantric rituals where it's used as an amulet or as protection. or to create a representation of the human form itself. Because primarily the human form is nothing but this brain and the spine. That's all. This is us. These limbs and all the other appendages are, as the name says, appendages. They're attachments, extra attachments. So where life exists is basically in this head and spine. And this Nagadown herb, it represents exactly this. It talks about the Sushumna Nadi. So when we are worshipping, this is another aspect of the tantric aspect of this whole Navaratri. So when we are saying, tamas, rajas, and sattva, it is a transition from the different states of energy, but it's also talking about the different nadis, which are nothing but synonymous with this prana, agni, and the ojas. So the first part, when we talk about Kali, or you find that sometimes in many of the contexts, the synonym given to Kali is Shiva itself. So there we are trying to work on the Ida Nadi of the body. And the second aspect, the Lakshmi, the Agni, the Tejas, in some sects they divided saying that this is the masculine, this is the feminine. When you're worshipping the Shakti itself, you give the masculine identity to the feminine itself. So that's what we call as the tamas or the prana. So in the second part, we are trying to work on the Pingala Nadi. And that's where the Agni aspect of it comes, the Pitta understanding comes. The third part, when we're talking about the Ojas or the Sattva Guna, here we're talking about the Sushumna Nadi, which is the final state. Because without working on the Ida and Pingala, the Sushumna can never be worked on. It's not a direct shortcut. You have to energize and stabilize the Ida first, energize and stabilize the Pingala second. When both are equally charged and stable, the Sushumna automatically awakens. But this awakening can be channeled in a more better manner for specific purposes that you wish. So that is where the third day practice is coming. So the Nagadam is, in fact, it's a herb. When you see, like I said, it's the root which is used a lot, which represents the serpent which is still in a coiled state. It is not woken up yet. So here we're working on the Sushumna Nadi, but you're trying to channelize, you're trying to wake up the serpent and give it a particular direction to flow in. So the spiritual significance of this Nagadown herb is that it is nothing but your Sushumna Nadi itself that you're trying to work on by using this external representative herb. And also when you consume it, this is one of those herbs which are ojasya in nature. So the next three herbs, in fact, the Nagadown, Tulsi, and the Shatavari, all three are what we call as ojasya. They increase the ojas of a particular person, the awareness, the life, the consciousness, just the aura. So in short, I should say the aura of a person. But the Nagadown, it kindles your fire first. It kindles the Kundalini Agni. And the same when you consume it within, it works for all the disorders of the Apanasthana. So say that a person has been paralyzed on the lower part of the back, or they're having compressions on the lower disc of the vertebrae. This is a herb that will give immediate relief, because this would improve the structural strength, and it will also improve the nourishment of the tissues of the lower part of your spine, not the upper part yet. So here you find something that is sattvic, ojasya, but associated with the Prithvi Mahabhuta or the Prithvi Amsha. So that's why we also say that Nagas reside in the Patala Loka. It's not because they literally, some of them do live in the Patala, which is underground, but to represent that this is the kindling of the fire which is happening, but at a primary stage. So the Nagadown has these two significances, both on the physical body, where it works on your spine, but the lower spine, and on the subtle body, it works on the Sushumna Nadi, because this is nature's Sushumna Nadi itself. And then this eighth day, the herb of the eighth day is the Tulsi. Now, Tulsi, as we know, there's not much to say, but it's very interesting with Tulsi because Tulsi is a herb that's associated with Mahavishnu. And anything that is associated with Lord Vishnu Vishnu Mahari, is nothing but representing aspects of kapha or ojas. But there is something very interesting here with Tulsi. Unlike Nagadaun is something where, like I said, you want the vehicle to run, you need to pump fuel inside to get it started and to get it running. So sometimes if the vehicle starting, you need to jumpstart the car, the battery. So the Nagadaun herb works in that manner. It works on the
Okay.
Sushumna Nadi, but it has a lot of prana as well. So it helps in kickstarting the Sushumna Nadi. And with the Tulsi, now say that the vehicle has started running. Now you need to sustain this, and but your fuel, so there's some block that's happening in the tube. Say from the fuel tank to the engine, there's something that's blocking in between. The Tulsi works in this manner, where it is Ojasya, but it is Tikshna. So that is why you have a lot of rules regarding the consumption of Tulsi. You cannot consume a Tulsi leaf directly. You cannot chew a Tulsi leaf. You need to place it in a shanka, in the conch, after which, along with some water, after which it is to be consumed. So all these rules are given regarding the consumption of Tulsi because it is as, not to frighten people, but it is as harmful as it is beneficial. It is tikshna, which means that it is volatile in nature. It's acidic. So, as with any acids, it can corrode. So you need to know when and where to use it. So the reason that it's associated with Mahavishnu is that why would something corrosive be associated with someone who is a preserver of life? So this is one of those herbs that increases your level of awareness, your level of consciousness. The Tulsi plant itself is a living plant. I mean, all plants are alive, but this is one of those plants which has a much, much higher level of awareness and consciousness, which which can perceive more and exhibit more. And though being limited to the plant form that it is, it can give a lot of signs. So they say that, no, actually, I shouldn't say that they say that. It's in my own experience that when things are a little off in a place, in a house, be it that a person has fallen, taken sick, or another person is not so mentally sound, and or in different contexts, be it the physical, be it the mental, or the person is having, or the family is having some particular bad time, you find that the Tulsi plant starts to build. Despite the amount of water that you pour, how much of a care you give to the Tulsi plant, the Tulsi plant is one of those few plants which are planted inside a house as an indicator to tell you what is the status of the prana in that environment, because it absorbs and reacts immediately. Many other herbs, they absorb but they don't react. There are some other plants which react, but they don't absorb so much. So you don't understand whether it is indicating its own status or the status of the environment around you. But the Tulsi plant, it keeps receiving and keep giving constantly. So Tulsi plant, the lemon plant, these are in fact few of the herbs which were prevalently grown for the family to identify if things are good, if things are right, if the ambience in that place is good, and what people call as good vibes, bad vibes right now. So if the energy of a place is good, pristine, grounded, and centered, the Tulsi will always be healthy. So this Tulsi plant, it has this dual nature. Though it is Ojasya, it gives a lot of Ojas, but it also has the Agni Tattva inside it. So, though it is representative of Vishnu, you find that it also has the Shakti imbibed within it. So, that is why we see Tulsi as a feminine plant, and we worship it as a feminine plant, and it's considered as Lakshmi. So, whenever you offer the Tulsi garland to Vishnu, you're offering Lakshmi to Vishnu. That's what we're doing there. So it's in fact the reason that Tulsi is given to Vishnu is because the ojas aspect of it complements. But pure ojas is not sufficient for life to happen. So you're giving him his consort, the feminine Shakti. And as with Shakti, Shakti is never inert. She's always dynamic. She's Rajasic, Tejas, Agni. So the Tulsi plant represents this as well. So though you're giving ojas, you're imbibing the gunas of ojas within yourself, you also need that Agni within it. So the Tulsi is in fact a very peculiar herb which contains both of this. It contains the Soma and it contains the Agni. So though it's for Vishnu, you need to be careful when consuming it because it is corrosive. So when you place it in the Shanka, the conch, the alkaline nature of the conch, it neutralizes the acidic nature of the leaf. And that's the reason that we place it before we give it as well. And on the final day, the ninth day, you have Shatavari, which is the herb of offering. And Shatavari, there's not much to say again because it's a very popular Ayurvedic herb. It's very popular because it's prevalently used in gynecological disorders. For all, I mean, this is what even Google tells you. And so, when you Google up what to do for feminine conditions, the first herb or the first medicine that comes up is Shatavari. The reason being that it's pure ojas. There's no other tainting of the gunas. You don't find any tinge of rajas, you don't find the agni, you don't find the prana or the tamas aspect. It is one of those herbs which is ojasya, purely ojasya in nature. And when you look at the female physiology, the women physiology, the aspect of garbha, where you have life which is being created, this is entirely dependent on the energy of ojas. So as long as the ojas is optimum in a woman's body, she can keep giving birth to new. She can give rise. She can give life. I shouldn't say give birthing. She can give life because there are multiple ways to give life than just the physical means of birthing. So this is a gift that, in fact, women are endowed with. Men, that's why you find that the men have to go and do tapas. It's not the women who have to do tapas. Men have to go and do tapas to generate energy within themselves. Whereas women, the female body, has been endowed with this battery that can constantly generate energy, which has an unlimited reservoir of energy within. And that's what Shatavari represents. But this energy of ojas, it gets depleted primarily. You see, very interestingly, there are many reasons, causes for diseases to occur. You can physically cause damage through consuming a wrong diet, having a poor lifestyle, or exerting yourself beyond your capacity. But there is a very specific set of condition where ojas, for the ojas to get depleted in your body, the main, I should say, the one and only cause, and also the main cause, is overthinking. So it's only when this overthinking exceeds, when you think unnecessarily. I mean, thinking about your survival, planning things is different. But having futile thoughts, anxiety, stress, this is the main cause for this ojas to get depleted in your body. And it's not the physical causes which deplete this ojas. So when this higher mental functions deplete you, and that causes a physical deficiency, that is where Shatavari comes in place. So it gives you back that ojas into your body through a physical form for once again your higher mental functions, your awareness, your consciousness to function. So when I talk about awareness, just being awake and perceiving things at this level, it's not awareness. Our brain is a supercomputer. It's the most wonderful machine that exists. And now when I look at an object, say that I look at this pen, a mind at a normal state of awareness, I shouldn't say low, but a normal state of awareness, sees it as a pen at the first glimpse. Someone with a higher awareness sees it as a pen, but their mind would not just see it as a physical pen, but it will calculate the nature. It will understand just by looking at it. I would understand the nature of the plastic, the nature of the ink, and I would understand that okay, so this is not just a pen, but I can put this to 50 other uses than just it being a pen. So that is what a higher level of awareness is. And when you have a super level of awareness, just by looking at this, I can understand what is the nature of the atoms within it. Though my eyes cannot penetrate like a microscope, but my brain is able to make the calculations necessary to understand what is the combination of the Mahabhutas inside it. Is it prana, agni, or ojas that is inside it, which is giving or manifesting its physical form as it is. And without even using the pen as a physical tool, just by holding it, a yogi would be able to transmit the energy of this to another place for whatever purpose. That is what the highest level of awareness is. So, when we talk about consciousness and awareness, it is our ability to perceive things, process things, and apply these things to make our life better. And in Siddha, there is a saying that all of reality that we see is the play of Shiva and Shakti. And that's what the Siddhas say. This whole world is a playground. We are here to play. And so the way to play is to understand reality. That's how you play with reality. So Shatavari is the final herb in this list, which is one that doesn't just work on the uterus and female disorders. It's not just limited to this, but it increases your level of perception, your awareness, your consciousness. It's pure ojas. And by this stage, what happens is when your awareness and perception is so fine-tuned, you are in tune with reality itself. And this is the state where you connect with God. And so through these 9 days, you start with the most gross physical aspect of supplementing your body, giving the physical requirements, then the more subtle requirements. And finally, you go into tuning yourself to a state where you're able to connect to the divinity within yourself and that's around you. So these 9 herbs, it's so beautifully designed that it doesn't just supplement your physical needs, but it redesigns your subtle body and the way it should be functioning, and it programs your consciousness as well.
Such a wonderful explanation, Doctor. Just one question. This is for the 9 days. So
Yes.
for the year, suppose we have to extrapolate it as a system for the year. How do we do it?
Yeah. This is that's a good question. I've never really
Or is
thought of
it,
that.
just a symbolic representation of the herbs over 9 days, or is it a system that we need to follow regularly?
Yeah. When we look at the time period, why the Navaratri specifically? If these are good for health, they should have mentioned in the Rutucharya, the seasonal regimens. So you have many other festivals. So each of the festivals, most of the festivals are designed. Some come at the equinox, but most of them come at the junction of seasons, or when there's a transition that's happening in the environment around us. All the Navaratris, there are some versions that say that there are 5 Navaratris, some that say that the 4 Navaratris. But whichever it be, when you look at the Navaratris, they fall on this phase known as the Rutu Sandhi. So when there is a change or a transition happening from one major way that the environment is functioning to another, through which this body is also going through an adaptive stress and change, that is exactly when the Navaratri has been placed. So it's actually a way of, and you can use this. These 9 herbs can be used as a method of helping the body, the physical body, transit from one season to another physically. And when you look at the spiritual aspect of it, and in the Siddha tradition, we have two major periods when we have our spiritual practices or the worship. One is during the month of Chaitra, the other one during the Kartika. So during these two phases, what happens is the Earth's magnetic field, it increases a lot. And interestingly, this is the time when you have the two equinox, the spring equinox and the autumn equinox. So during this period of the equinox, the Earth is closest to the sun, and this proximity creates increased pull in the magnetic field towards the north, towards the poles. And this is the exact time when you can find in the Arctic and the Antarctic area, you find that the aurora borealis, the northern lights, are glowing as well, which is, I call it as the Earth's aura. And so this regimen would spiritually benefit a lot during these two Navaratris when we practice it. and which is basically now, this season. Now we are soon to transit into the Kartik phase, and the Chaitra we have passed it in the May, April. So spiritual benefit is maximum at these two times, but the physical benefit can be derived out of it if we follow the 4 Navaratris of the year, which fall between the 6 ritus. In fact, if you want, you can add the Gupta Navaratri, which is the 5 Navaratris. Then it makes perfect transition between all the 6 ritus, the Shad ritus that we have. So, and the reason that it's not given as a regular use is that, like I mentioned, when you look at the Tulsi, they are as harmful as they're beneficial if used inappropriately. So these are not mentioned in our everyday use because what differentiates a medicine from food is that, I mean, there are many sayings, "Unave marundu marundu unavu," which is your food is a medicine, the medicine should be your food. But there is a demarcation between what should be food and what should be your medicine. And I would also add another, which is what is poison here. Because my guru, my Siddha guru used to tell me that what differentiates these three is that all the substances have all the 5 Mahabhutas in it. So he used to call it as Sat, which is the essence. So everything is made up of Panchamahabhutas. Now, it's a matter of the proportion of it. So when you look at food, the 5 Mahabhutas are more or less balanced with each other. So it's easier for you to consume. You consume it, the 5 Mahabhutas being balanced, it acts as a proper all-round supplement for what your needs are. And this you can continue on an everyday basis. Whereas you take the medicine, here out of the 5 Mahabhutas, you might have 3 or probably 2 Mahabhutas which are more dominant at say 70%, while the others are at 30%. So this makes it more potential. So that makes it more fast acting as well. The food is not as potential or fast acting as the medicine because all the 5 are pretty much balanced and they are more to supplement your nutritional needs. Whereas with the medicine, the virya increases, the potency increases because 2 of the Mahabhutas, 2 or 3 are more increased as compared to the other 2. Whereas when you look at what a poison is, what makes a substance toxic or poisonous in nature is that there's only one Mahabhuta which is very high as compared to the other 4. So it is not that it is poison because there is a bad chemical in it. It is just this imbalance. So in Ayurveda and Siddha, what we call as a shodhana or the purification process, we don't remove the poison or the toxin out. What we are doing is we are using another substance which has a dominance of the other 4 Mahabhutas as opposed to this one. And when you combine these two and process it, you have a new substance which is balanced, which has that potential, the potency which is going to make it fast acting. Because you want that potency to be retained. You don't want to remove the toxicity and remove its potency as well. You want the potency to be retained, but you don't want it to harm the body. So it's like giving a bitter pill, but sugar coating it and putting it into the body. So that is where we have this demarcation between the food and the herbs. And more, some of these are in fact like Kushmanda, but it can be consumed as a food. But you consume it. I in fact I do a lot of these experiments on myself. So I tried consuming Kushmanda for 5 continuous days, and honestly, I could not. My brain did not work. Yes. So I was unable to quite literally think. I could feel a quite evident sluggishness of my head, my brain, and I had some patients come over. Usually, I diagnosed by the pulse, and I was trying to read the pulse, but I was unable to get any reading out of it. I was unable to interpret anything, and so my guru used to tell me that at no point, because he used to consume meat, my Siddha Guru. So, but he used to tell me that at no point should you touch pork and beef, cow's meat. And he said that if you do, by any chance, even accidentally, ensure that you don't practice medicine for the next 1 week. So I thought maybe it's because okay, it's some papa karma, bad, some sin. But then I didn't have to consume those two just by consuming this Kushmanda,
Yes.
because we have a saying that the Kushmanda, it's equal to sacrificing a goat. You don't have to sacrifice. You, instead of sacrificing chicken, you can cut a lemon. Instead of sacrificing the goat, you can cut a Kushmanda, because it carries the equal energy and the properties as that particular animal. So after consuming this Kushmanda for 5 days, I could feel a very evident sluggishness in my thoughts, my functioning.
Mhm.
So then I realized that okay, medicine should remain as medicine and food should remain as food.
Mhm.
So these are very high in potency, very fast acting, very strong for the body to process. So I think that is why they have limited to it to just these 9 days. But this
Mhm.
9 days is not just at one point in the year. Since we have multiple Navaratris,
Yeah.
you can see it as 9 into 5. So, but the medicine should remain as medicine.
Such a lovely conversation, Doctor. It was really amazing and so many insights you have offered. I'm sure this Navaratri will be special for all our viewers with this added understanding of medicine and the qualities of the Devi and of the three gunas.
I'm,
Thank
I'm
you so
casual.
much for your time.
Yes, no, no trouble.